welcome. My name is Izzy Fuqua. I'm the Adult Programs Coordinator for the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, and I've had the delight of working with our curator for the special exhibition, The Dirty South, Valerie Cassell Oliver, on this Dirty South virtual speaker series presented by Bank of America. Our speakers tonight will be presenting on literature and lyricism in Southern hip hop, and Valerie will be doing bios and more formal introductions for them. So Valerie, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Izzy. We're really delighted to have you join us this evening. I am really thrilled by having both Roger and Charlie here with us. Both of them have contributed to the catalog. So if you love what you're going to hear tonight, please pick up that catalog, and you will be even more thrilled by seeing their words on paper. I just wanted to briefly introduce them. Charlie Braxton is a poet, playwright, and cultural critic. As a poet and essayist, his works have appeared in Black American Journal Forum, Crossroads, Eyeball, the Minnesota Review, Image, Sepia Poetry Journal, The Source, and Vibe magazines. His first trilogy of poetry began with Ascension from the Ashes, which was published in 1990 by Blackwood Press, followed by two additional volumes, Cinders Rekindled and Embers in the Ashes, Poems in a Haiku Manner, both on Jawara Press. He is the co-author of the book Gangster Gumbo, which is a history of Southern hip hop, with the late Jean-Pierre Labarthe. He has a forthcoming book of poetry, which will begin a new trilogy. That book will be published in 2022 and is called And the Earth Cried Blood. Next, Roger Reeves. Roger earned his PhD from the University of Texas at Austin and is the author of King Me by Copper Canyon Press, which was published in 2013. His poems have appeared in journals such as Poetry, Plowshares, American Poetry Review, the Boston Review, and Tin House, among many others. He is the recipient of the Larry Levis Reading Prize, the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Literary Award, the John C. Zacharias Book Award, a Whiting Award, two Pushcart Prizes, as well as a fellowship from the Cave Canon and the National Endowment for the Arts, as well as the Poetry Foundation and Princeton University. His second collection of poetry is forthcoming and is published by W.W. Norton. It will be entitled Best Barbarian and published in March of 2022. And with that, I will turn it over to both Roger and Charlie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Charlie.
No, please, brother, you.
I was going to say, delighted. It's great to talk to you. And I thought maybe we talked about this, we should start with a poem, but if you got some earlier thoughts, let's start with those earlier thoughts.
Well, let's start with the poems, and then the earlier thoughts can go forward.
Okay. Do you want to kick us off with a poem, and then I'll come
Sure.
back?
This is a new poem that I've written for Freeman Vines. It's called Shot House Blues. A big man sings the blues, the snarl in his voice reminiscent of howling wolves crying at a red devil moon. His gravelly voice leaps from his barrel chest and bounces off the wooden wall of the smoky juke joint, while well-worn Brogane shoes stomp 4/4 black beat rhythmic patterns on dusty hardwood floors as the fine daughters of the Delta dust sweat with the sons of the sacred Southern soil, entranced in a ritual dance to shothouse rhythms accented by field holler screams that echo ancient sounds from an ancient land, gone but never forgotten. To the old church folks, blues was the devil's music, evil sounds not fit for decent Christian folk. They warned us never fall prey to its lustful lure. But for us, it was already too late. Blues had been done, signed its name on the creases of our hearts and in the far corners of our souls. Its foot stomping rhythms hits us with Mack truck force, igniting our spirits with a serpentine fire, burning deep down in our spines, like muscadine grapes growing wild on the vine. It just grew into us, making us free men and women.
Beautiful, Charles. Beautiful, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so funny you used that phrase, just grew. It made me think of Ishmael Reed's novel, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You caught that immediately. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I love that signal. I love the signifying going on. So I'm gonna play with you. I'm gonna play.
Okay, all right. Come on with it.
So the poem I'm gonna read is called Future from Beyond the Voice of God. And I'm playing with the hip hop artist out of Atlanta, Future.
Future. Okay, okay.
He has this song, right? So similarly, you know, playing in the blues, he has this song where he says, it's time to fuck up, it's about to fuck up some commas, right?
Yeah.
That song, you know, originally, you know, you think about the song in terms of conspicuous consumption, right? Like, you know, 40,000, 100,000 make money showers, right? Like, it's all about sort of, let's fuck up some commas, i.e. that means like, let's amass wealth, right?
Right.
But I begin to think about it, if we play with it askance, right? Like if we play with it oppositionally, right? And what I mean by that is look up that fuck up some commas. I think about how Black folks came over on the slave ship, right? Huddled spoon fashion, right? Mm-hmm. That's a comma. We came over as commodity. We came over as commas, right?
And we made capital for the slave master.
Right. And so maybe fucking up commas is actually like a way of talking about like kind of divesting white folks of their capital or fucking up the systems sort of way. So I started thinking about, like, what if we thought about it as like fucking up how commas are made of us, right? So this goes into that. So this poem, Future from Beyond the Voice of God. It's also playing with the idea of selfies, right? Like I'm really sort of fascinated by selfie culture because it's just odd.
Me too.
Odd. So Future from Beyond the Voice of God. What shall be done with the demand for more selfies? Selfies of the crow in the wheat knocking against the window. Selfies of my daughter hooting like an owl and beating the back of her cage, the back of her bones. Selfies of Wittgenstein's eyes settling on the back of a crow, which is the shadow of a boy delivering milk to the door of his mother, where language begins. Gertrude Stein over the Stambergasi eating salt fish and conch fritters with Aimé Césaire. More selfies of Negroes from Niger, New Orleans, blue-black and the blue-black buck and canter of summer, and Yves Saint Laurent glasses and pinafores of light pinned to their eyes. No church in the wild, but more selfies of Susie Asada buck dancing on balustrades near the nigger cemeteries, where the chariot swung so low, we just called them commas. We about to fuck up some commas, yeah. Gerrymander and Jack Johnson the shit out of shit. Why do white women love Black men? Because we eat cold eels and think distant thoughts. Jack Johnson, we need more selfies. Selfies of Frederick Douglass's pen removed from the gashes in his feet and writing hot checks for Rolexes and rivers our bodies just can't cash. Wade in the water, children. We about to fuck up some trauma, yeah. Selfie and holler, yeah. Instagram at the ashram with Little Weezy and Wardell Curry Jr. Not senior, busing 3-pointers, yeah, on behalf of a local charity that sends mosquito nets to children in Africa, the Sudan, Niger, I don't know, tiger, burning bright, tiger, hanging from the street light, distant thought. I'm so in time, I'm out of time. So selfie, I'm healthy. I mean, I'm saying though, you know what I'm saying?
Word. I like that. And I see you're signifying. I hear you, no church in the wild with the Jay-Z and the Kanye. I hear you work with the juvenile. I hear you.
Also that Jack Johnson quote. That's actually so that Jack Johnson. So Jack Johnson once was asked, you know, because he was infamous for, you know, dating interracially, was asked, why do white women love Black men so much? And he gave, I think, the best response, and this is, I quote it, "Because we eat cold eels and think distant thoughts." It's a great right? I'm playing all, like, I'm playing with Picasso, Gertrude Stein, all of that. Like, you know, to me, I'm interested, and this might be someplace, is the way, the referentiality of hip hop. That's what this poem for me was about, right? Like what you did with the Just Grew, right? With the Ishmael Reed, right? There's a way in which hip hop and the literature of the South, you know, Outkast does this.
Outkast does it a lot, exactly.
There's so much elusiveness, right? And if you put it in a different tradition, it might scare folks. But there's a way in which in the South, like when Outkast says, it gives me the Dickens reminiscent of Charles. Right? Little tech, right? Like, I'm interested in that elusive. Can you talk a little bit about the elusive tradition, or that, like, that sense of illusion that hip hop?
Well, the thing about hip hop is the thing that it takes from the old and recontextualizes and brings it into the new. So when you mentioned Spodiote Doublelicious, which again, musically, they're taking from dub reggae, okay, with the horn, dun 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 dun, but they're telling you a story. They're taking you to the club and they're telling you a story about, hey, this is what happened at the clubs. That's why he goes, it gives me the Dickens reminiscence of Charles.
Yep, come on.
Now, not only are they, here's where it's really brilliant, because Charles Dickens is known to write about the downtrodden.
That's right.
Which hip hop in and of itself is the voice of the underclass. So that was the most brilliant thing about that whole conversation. And then it's done again in a conversational tone, because they're talking to their peers. We as the listeners are the peers, and there are people who are on the outside listening.
Yep.
But the beautiful thing about hip hop, in particular Southern hip hop, we know that the people on the outside may not overstand us, as the rosters say, and we don't care.
I think that's an interesting, I mean, I want to talk, I think that's what's really interesting about Southern hip hop, right? Which is, it's willing to be highly intellectual. Like that, what Andre does right there, first of all, it's like, I mean, it's also like, I hate to bring in the like literary theory, it's Bakhtinian as hell, because it's like heteroglossic. And what I mean by, like, so there's this term, right? The novel is a discourse of many types of languages, from the author's language,
right,
the people's language, right? Outkast does all of that, right? It's such a, like, and what's really interesting, I think this is what's seductive about Southern hip hop and in the sort of Southern sensibility, is it's something you could dance to too, right? So there's a way in which it's embodied, right? He makes it sort of, that's why I think that term Dickens, not only is the Charles Dickens, but Dickens is also like spirit, right? A type of like, inspiration, almost muse, right?
Well, again, here's the thing. And I remember writing a piece called The Hip Hop Blues Connection, because as much as we want to think of hip hop as separate, at least my New Yorkers like to do this, as it's separate from the other forms of music, which is ridiculous given the fact that it borrows from other forms of previous genres to make the music. Well, lyrically, it does the same. You see what I'm saying? So by Andre referencing Charles Dickens, these are things that he read when, keep in mind, at the time that he was doing that album, he had just finished doing his GED. So that may have been a book he had to read, which resonated with him. And one of the things that I don't think that we as Southern lyricists, Southerners in hip hop get enough credit for is our intellectualism.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you, Charlie.
You know, I don't think that we get the credit we deserve as being poets on the microphone. You know, Andre is a poet. Big Boy is a poet. Big Gip, Timo, CeeLo, and Cujo are poets. Scarface is a master poet, if you ask me.
Yeah. You know what's so interesting is, and this is a personal story, was so I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and I wasn't
Okay.
allowed to listen to hip hop. I wasn't raised with listening to quote unquote worldly music. But I remember going to college, and when I got to college, it was actually the thing that turned me to hip hop. I remember the first time I really listened to it, it was CeeLo. It was the Nigga Experience, right? Is it People Don't Dance No More? I forget which album that is.
That's World Party.
World Party. That, and then I was listening to Aquemini. And I remember at the time I was like a mechanical and aerospace engineering major in college. I wasn't even an English major.
Wow.
And I was listening to this and made me want to be a writer. And I had written before, I'd been a poet, like had been writing in high school. But I was like, oh my, and I remember staying up and just like trying to do what Outkast said, trying to catch that feeling off instrumentals, right? And I'll never forget when I realized how great of metaphor makers, when I think it's Big Boy says it's colder than a polar bear's toenail.
Toenail, oh
Thinking
yeah.
about how visual that is, right? Because if you think about a polar bear's paw in snow,
In the snow,
right? Like the coldest.
you can't get no colder than that.
And I just thought, this is it. Like to me, I was like, I want to make things that do that. I want to make people just stop for a second and be like, wow, you can't get, colder than all the iron in the cool house, right? Like even that sort of, those types of linguistic iterations remind me of I had a friend who used to say, more wild than a bear in the wilderness, right? And that idea of playing off wild and wilderness, right? Like to me, that's such a Southern intellectual, linguistic practice that for me just.
Well, I mean, but see, Anti-Aliens to me was there. Even though I wrote the 5 mic review for Aquemini, and it is a classic, Anti-Alien is my favorite album. Okay, and I've written. Regina Bradley is coming out with a book collection of that she edited called The Outcast Reader. And I have an essay in there that compares them, that centers them in funk. Well, I mean, when you listen to that album lyrically, oh, it's steeped in funk, brother.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, the whole spaceship Afrofuturist thing,
Cool.
that's straight funk. You know, the fact, the way they even presented the album, there's a comic book that went with that album. Did you know that?
I did.
You know, and then the way Andre dressed, you know, when brothers were thinking, oh man, this brother's losing his mind. But really what he was doing was he was dressing in the tradition of funk. He was creating a language, a visual language to go along with the music that they were creating.
That's right. I think that is not only just spot on, but I think it's really sort of it. I wanted to ask you this question, right? Because I know you have like deep, I mean, you're a music journalist and a poet, so you have like deep sort of knowledge of what I would call lineage and tradition. And this gets to it when you talk about the Afrofuturism. I've been thinking about the avant-garde jazz tradition. Right, in the South, right? Because the avant-garde jazz tradition is really a Southern tradition. If we talk about it, Coltrane, Marion Brown, Sun Ra, Ornette Coleman, right? So the avant-garde
even the members of the art ensemble of Chicago,
correct? AATM,
from the
right?
South,
from the South, right? What's his name? Phil Coran, right?
And
I've been thinking about this tradition and wondering how you might identify a type of avant-garde, or where's the experimentation for you in hip hop? Both like if you had to sort of chronicle it genealogically, but also today. Some of the things that I'm thinking about is like, what is the avant-garde in hip hop today? And then what, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, obviously you start with, let's look at it this way. You got 5 epicenters in the South. The same way you have 5 boroughs, you have 5 epicenters. All right. And these epicenters are known for creating their own genres. So you've got Miami, and then you've got Luke with the Miami bass thing, right? And then you got somebody say like a Trick Daddy who comes from that bass era. because he used to be a part of Luke, and then he brought something different to the table, which was lyrics, which was also Poison Clan. Poison Clan used bass music, but they brought lyrics. All right, let's go to Atlanta. Atlanta started with on the bass thing, and then they created the whole Bankhead bounce. But Outkast did something revolutionary, in my opinion.
Okay.
And here's what they did. They looked within their own selves, and they said, you know, Georgia is the birthplace of soul. Whether you're looking at Ray Charles, whether you're looking at James Brown. So they took soul music, funk, which is a Southern thing, meshed it with hip hop. And more importantly, they rapped in their own dialect. They didn't try to sound like East Coast artists. And they rapped about their environment. So if you're looking at the that's avant-garde for hip hop. Because when you listen to Southern Playalistic, there was nothing that sounded like that. It was unabashedly Southern. But at the same time, it was deeply rooted in hip hop. There was no way you could deny them.
I would even argue that this is the thing for me that always makes Outkast sort of at the edge of something always, is they never try to sound the same. They never sort of try to have a sound, right? They're not, like, I think Stevie Wonder is a great example of this. Like every album Stevie Wonder was going to be different, right? Like,
and you know why that is? Because those guys listen to a myriad of music. I was in the studio with them when they when they were mixing their first single for Aquemini, which was Rosa Parks, now known as The Parks. And they were playing the album for me because I was writing a cover story. Now, this is before I even knew I was going to be, get the assignment to write the review. And they were playing the album, and I'm listening to the album, and I'm trying to find some glimpse of the previous album. Because, artists they build, and it was like, nope. If you're looking for Southern Playalistic, nope, it's not here. If you're looking for ATLian, not here either. And so I'm talking to them about the music they listen to. And when they played Liberation, the first thing I thought about was, wow, that sounds like something Gil Scott-Heron would do. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of Gil Scott-Heron's Rivers of My Father. And I told them that, and you know what they said? We were looking for Gil Scott-Heron. We just didn't know where to find it. So they actually they were connected to the music. So when you talk to Andre and Big Boy, they're hip to other forms of music. They're listening to rock. They're listening to funk. They're listening to R&B. They're listening to, African music. They're listening to everything. And they're listening to blues. And you can hear it. You can hear, when you hear Rosa Parks, what blew me away was, one, they take Rosa Parks in the back of the bus as a metaphor for Southern hip hop and where Southern hip hop is being placed in mainstream hip hop. That to me was, can I curse? Fucking brilliant. I was like, wow. And that's when I was saying to myself, this is a 5-mic album. I don't know how somebody's got to convince somebody that this is a 5-mic album.
I actually think also, I just want to jump, that's also a poet, like it's beyond metaphor. It's a poetics, right? They're like, this is what, as a poet, I'm always like thinking about is thinking into something like, how can Rosa Parks, what she did, or how can, for me, Future, right, in this poem, right? How can I think about Future, not just merely giving me a phrase or giving me something to sample, but gives me a whole sensibility, right? Like, to me, that's what Outkast is able to do. Like, in that moment, they're like, Rosa Parks becomes a sensibility that we can build a whole song of, that can become a dance track, right? Like,
Yeah.
I remember being in college and that come on, and it wasn't, you know, you can think about it, but you wasn't gonna be thinking long. You was gonna be
No,
trying
no,
to
you were gonna move your feet. You were gonna move your feet.
Things
And
gonna
that's
be
what
moving.
the whole thing is. They make you move your feet while they are subliminally indoctrinating or inculcating you with thoughts that later on in life you'll be like, wow, that's what it's like a good poem.
Mhm.
A good poem, years after you read it initially, which initially it's going to hit you emotionally.
Right.
But years later, after you keep going back to it, you unfold different meanings and different metaphors, and you connect different. That's what it is.
I agree.
And to me, that's the greatness of good hip hop. But it's also the greatness of Southerners, because think about it. When you look at the roots of American literature, particularly the roots of African American literature, that literature is rooted in our folk tales.
Mm-hmm.
It's rooted in our slave narratives,
mm-hmm.
and poetically is rooted in the lyrics of the blues and gospel.
That's right.
Or spirituals, as some people would say.
Can you talk about the other epicenters? Because I know we'll get stuck on the Atlanta, you know, Outkast becomes like an energy that you just like want to feed more. But like, can you talk? You said there were three more, because you said Miami, Atlanta. What were the other two epicenters?
Okay, so next we go to New Orleans.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and New Orleans gives us the call and response in bounce music. Mm-hmm. The thing about New Orleans is, it is one of the most Africanized cities outside in the United States. The only other place that I can think of that has more Africanism or as much Africanisms as New Orleans is the Georgia Sea Islands and the Gullahs Geechee culture in the Carolinas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with New Orleans, what you get is you get someone like Juvenile and Ha.
Mm-hmm.
And Ha to me was one of that is avant-garde.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't get more avant-garde than that.
Talk to me why. Tell me why that's avant-garde. Why
well, one is it's deeply rooted in the linguistics of New Orleans. Like somebody in New Orleans will go, "Hey, bro, you going to the store? You going to the store, huh? Hey, you gonna buy me a cold drink, huh? You gonna pay for it too, huh?" That's how they talk. Mm-hmm. But Juvenile flips that by asking a series of questions that can actually be created as statements.
Mm-hmm. 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 It's also to play the Ha, like Ha is extra linguistic, right? It's participating in a type of opacity, right? That's full of meaning without a direct syntactical and
it also requires, or is an unspoken response. That Ha, again, call and response. It's an unspoken response.
It's a
because
building.
When he's
go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead. My bad.
I was just gonna say, it's like a building. Sorry, it's just a building of sociality, right? Like it's a building community, right? Like the Ha creates like automatically there's community right there, as opposed to this thing, right? It's saying, come here, let's be together on this.
Come in, and you know what was interesting was it took almost a year for New York to get on that record.
Hmm.
And I remember talking to I think it was Wendy Washington, who was the director of marketing for Universal. And she was like, "What is," I said, "if you understand New Orleans talk, this is the way they talk." I said, "This is a brilliant record. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether New York gets on it or not." I mean, seriously, the record's gonna go platinum.
You know what's really interesting? I want to connect this moment that you're to Callaloo, the creative writing, the literary journal that was started in the South by Charles Rowell.
And Jerry Ward and Tom Dent.
Yeah, because this is another important aspect, right? It's like that moment where Andre at the awards said, Source Awards, like the South got something to say.
Got something to say.
That happened with African American literature in the late 70s, right? Like this, it's like Charles Ross, they were like, yo, the South got something to say. And these sort of New York or East Coast, I call it the 13 colonies problem, right? The 13 colonies problem.
I like that. I'm gonna have to steal that one from you,
I get that from Jericho Brown, another, he's a Southern poet from Louisiana. He called them the 13 colonies, but it becomes this like 13 colonies, like it gets fixed, right? And the South is like, well, we in the 13 colonies, but we also not in a lot of ways. And there's this tradition, right? And there's a great literary tradition. And I think you're saying something, it's interesting that the hip hop mirrored the literature, what was happening in African-American.
Well, again, there's always been these geocentric cultural politics when it comes to culture in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that New York is the media capital of the world.
Mm.
The publishers are there. The majority of the literary magazines that quote unquote decide, or the culture, the culture barometers are there. And their ideal of the South is tainted by the history that they think they know.
Come on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sadly, this translates even to Black folk in New York, because they think that we are illiterate when the South has per capita more great writers than any other region in the country. Okay. And I have to remind them, look, y'all come down here to get educated. Y'all come down here to go to Morehouse. Y'all come down here to go to Spelman. Y'all come down here to go to Tuskegee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Jackson State and Tennessee State and Texas Southern and Prairie View, etc.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with you, Charlie.
So I don't understand where this cultural biasness is coming from.
I always think about that Nas moment where he was like, I won't be able to quote it the bar, but the summation is that, he was like, I went down south and he was like, don't let the slow talking fool you. They not stupid.
Okay,
right?
But here's the thing about Nas. I don't know what writer it was that was talking about saying that Nas had this coolness that they couldn't understand.
Yeah.
And then I was saying to myself, Nas's father is from Natchez, Mississippi.
That's right.
Nas spent many summers in Natchez.
That's right.
That coolness that you see, I can show you 100 brothers like that in Mississippi right now. But even some of the northern lyricists have some southern roots. Let's look at Old Dirty Bastard.
Yep, that's a great one. Yep.
Okay. Old Dirty Bastard said in his in an interview with Black Dog Bone of Murder Dog magazine, he asked him, where did you get your style from? Your style is so unique. He said, well, my parents are from Alabama. And they used to listen to a lot of old blues records.
Yeah.
So when I came up, I wanted to sound like those blues musicians. So that's when you get that, oh, baby, come on. And that's him trying to imitate the music that he grew up on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the South is impacting the North lyrically speaking, and they don't even know it.
Well, I think they do know it sometimes. Like, it's funny because I think about like someone like, I'd be interested, as you were naming epicenters, is Houston one?
Oh yeah, Houston, I was getting to that. Houston is certainly one of them. I mean, you cannot deny the impact that the Ghetto Boys and Scarface and UGK with Pimp C, and Pimp C, an unabashedly Southern lyricist, Bun B, a very, very, very intricate poetic, philosophical lyricist. Okay. And not just that, you also have the impact that they created their own form of music. Screw.
Yeah.
That slowed down, laid back. I just wrote a whole piece on DJ Screw for the Bitter Southerner. You should check it out.
Okay.
But Screw impacted not only the way Houston listened to music, the way we listened, he impacted the way production was done down south. When you hear Tupac slowing his own, you know, Tupac, that was Screw. Now, and to be fair to my Florida brothers, they have something called slow down, which was taking place. But the difference is Screw was not just slowing it down, he was chopping and cutting the music in a certain way. So it's different from just slowing it down so you can hear the echo of the bass. It wasn't for that purpose. It was specifically for the sake of making something new with something old.
I feel that. Okay.
You feel me?
I feel you. One more episode. What's the last episode? Because I'm like
Memphis, baby.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Memphis.
Okay.
Memphis, Tennessee. And they gave us Buck music. Okay. And of course, we know Buck through 8-Ball and MJG when they first came out, and that up-tempo, fast, aggressive lyricism and that fast, hard-hitting beat. And even though they were their label was based in Texas, the owner of the label was from Memphis, and so were 8-Ball and MJG. And what they simply did was they took their Buck, brought it to Texas, mixed it with a little Screw, and you got their style. And then, of course, you got 3-6 Mafia, Scarface, Al Capone, Gangsta Pat, all of the greats. But as simple as some people will say, 3-6 and some of those guys are, they really do, when you listen to them, they've got their own thing going on. You know, when you listen to, say, I gotta stay fly, it's repetition of sound.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's one of the things I love about hip hop, and this is, you know, where I think where it is where music departs from the poetry is in those moments like that, and it's also about like signifying emotion, right? And like through that holding of that tone or that chopping of the tone, right? Like that does so much, right? Like that's like when your mom would look at you and hold her eye, you know, sometimes she, you know, so, you know, like that's that look. You know what I mean?
Look. Yeah, that's that look.
It's a similar sort of gesture. I think that's the thing that I love about sort of Southern discourse, Southern language, is the gesturality in the language. There's so much gesturality in the language.
Well, I mean, keep in mind that language to us is more than just words.
That's right.
It's body. It's even if you follow the writings of Robert Farris Thompson, it's language, it's body motion. It can even be the clothes that you're wearing. You see what I'm saying? Because that's saying something to the person on the outside. It can be the tone. You know, hey man is one thing. Hey man is another.
It's a totally
different conversation that going on right there.
Yeah.
You and I know, or Greg Carr will say, you know, like you standing in the back of a line and your buddy's working and he doesn't see you, but when he does see you, you go, yo.
Right.
And you raise them to, he knows what those two hands mean.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So another question.
Okay.
This is about, I feel like we're in a good space here. I got a question about experimentation again, but where is experimenting happening in Southern hip hop now? And not just place, but like who, where would you identify it sonically?
You know what? And I'm not a big fan of his, but you just mentioned it. You talked about it. Future. Dude, I'm not a huge fan of Future, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not. He's not.
I hear you.
But I've got to give credit him and even the Migos. Them rapping between the beat. I mean, I'm like, what? When I first heard Migos, I was like, these guys don't know where the beat is. I'm serious. I mean, I'm old school. Okay. So I was like, and then after, you know what really made me realize these guys were geniuses?
What?
Bad and Bougie. I was like, oh my God, this is genius.
Why so?
Well, one, it breaks rules. Because it's an understated rule, or not even understated. It's this, you stay on beat or else you considered a corny rapper. And then on top of it, the whole ideal of the mumble, which of course, again, when I first heard it, I didn't like it, but I understand what it is saying. It's like, this is a new language we're creating. And it's locking you out and us in. So if you don't understand what we're saying, that's your problem. But guess what? Your kids understand.
Yeah.
My peers understand. And that's all that matters.
I also don't know if it's mumbling. Like so I had this conversation.
It's a language. I'm not saying it's
no, but like I know this is gonna be a little. I had this conversation with a cat here in town, in Austin, Caribbean cat, and he said this thing, and I kind of agree. He was saying that he thinks it's closer to chanting. That maybe, like that in some ways the sonic sort of landscape that they're making in the minimalist nature of sound, right? Like when we think about like minimal singing, right? I think it's in the moaning tradition more than the mumbling tradition, right? Like which then puts more of a blues tradition, right? And
exactly.
So I don't think of it as a mumble per se, as it's, to me, it's this thing of like repetition, right? It's the same sound over and over, such that the sound becomes not itself anymore, and it can mean something that
a million. Or it could be like when you go back to the moan, like in the blues, when the moan is there, the moan, or even in church, is there when there is no word to express that emotion. You got that, and the audience knows, the people there know exactly what you are trying to say.
And I think that has to do a lot with, like, I think responding to our current political.
But I think that's interesting, because if you look at now that I think back on it, you look at Atlanta. Atlanta has a significant Caribbean population. If you look at 21 Savage, who's from England initially, which I'm willing to bet you that his parents may be from the Caribbean themselves. But mostly it's an Atlanta thing. If you go to Atlanta, you listen to native Atlanteans talk.
Yeah.
That's the way they sound, like Future. Yeah, that's their language. And the kids, again, I think, and this is my theory, and I'm throwing it out there. I've told Regina the theory, and I'll leave it to you scholars to unravel it and either disprove it or hopefully not. But I think that when you look at Atlanta, the last time I was in Atlanta, I think I met maybe 3 or 4 Grady's babies. You know what a Grady's baby is?
I do. I used to live in Atlanta. I do.
Okay, so yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
What a Grady baby is.
Yeah. Okay. For the benefit of those who aren't from Atlanta, who don't know, a Grady's baby is a native Atlantean. That means they were born in Grady's Hospital.
Yep.
That means they are Atlanta to their core.
That's right.
Okay, so if you look at Atlanta, you got all of these different people coming from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And I think native Atlanteans are using that language. They're creating a new language because you got all of these influences coming in. So this language, again, a way of locking us in and locking others out.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that tracks with something. There's this great scholar, philosopher who died not many years ago, probably about 8 years ago. Caribbean cat named Edward Glissant. I don't know if you ever. Glissant said he has this really great book called Caribbean Discourse.
Oh, I need to get that.
It's a really great book, and he talks about why in the Caribbean, he says Caribbean man spoke with his hands, why he spoke so loudly, or why patois evolved, and it was so that the master couldn't understand what was actually said, right? So the loudness, right, it becomes din, right? And so he says for the Caribbean language, for Caribbean linguistics, din becomes discourse. And so I think about like that mumbling or moaning. Moaning is a discourse, right? That those, like you said, in the church, are those that like I always think about when they be like, hey, show, like when they them dudes when they be like, hey, show, come here, show, you know, that sort of real quick like that sound, that's to go underneath something, right? It's not to be, or it's to go on top of something such that you ignore it because it is something else, right? Because what you are locked into is here. So I just think about it in relation to that. Now I know, Charlie, we could talk forever, me and you.
Yeah. We might have to continue this off camera.
And I think we have to, I think this is about the time we'd open up for Q&A.
Okay.
So Valerie.
Yes, hi. This has been such an insightful conversation. I am taking copious notes myself, so thank you both for that. We did have a question, which was when and where the ladies enter into this conversation. What women, musician, rappers are also stretching and innovating in terms of language?
Oh, excellent question. Mia X comes to mind from No Limit. 3D Nate from not No Limit, but from New Orleans, who's also an excellent rapper. Sarah, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Yeah, Sarah from Atlanta, Georgia. You definitely need to hear her. And for we apologize. My sexist self apologizes to the ladies. But certainly they are very great females. Like I said, Mia X comes to mind, 3D Nate, Sarah. As a sister out of Texas, and I can't think of her name right now. Oh boy. Okay. Oh my goodness. I can't even think of her name right now.
Not Megan Thee Stallion.
You know what? I like Megan Thee Stallion.
Me too.
Believe it or not, I do. I think I would like to see her do some more introspective things with her lyricism, because she can write. She writes her own lyrics. But I would love to see her do some introspective things about her life and her life choices. I would like to hear her do that. If she can do that, I think she's going to shock the world.
I hope that. But of course, I'm in Virginia, so you know I've got to throw out Missy. I'm surprised Missy did not come to the forefront of your brain.
Oh, see, okay. I'm remiss on Missy and Super Duper Fly. Oh, that was some innovative stuff. You're absolutely right. But you know what? I guess I think of her because she worked with so many different artists around the country, and Puffy embraced her. I always saw her as an East Coast artist, but Virginia is certainly below the Mason-Dixon line. And she is a Southerner, and we love her. Sorry.
No problem. You know, it's we're always here to help expand, keeping the flow going, but expanding it to be inclusive. And I just love the richness of this conversation. And I started off someone who really embraced someone like Zora Neale Hurston very early on because of her insistence of including the South in early on when people were talking about this sort of renaissance around Blackness. right? She was, really quick to say, it's not just happening in New York. We need to go back to Eden, Florida, Edenville, and we need to capture that. She was as much an anthropologist as she was a writer, and someone who preserved, who sought to preserve that language, whether it was in her own novels or whether it was finding it in the lyricism of the music that came out during that time. You know, this exhibition drills down 100 years from the 1920s to the present, quite frankly. And I am really curious as if you found any artists, very much like you were saying about Outkast and their desire to really pull in historically works, lyricism and literature. Do you find people who may be tapping also on the sort of literature itself, not just lyricism from other musical genres, but from literature itself?
Well, I mean,
you said Dickens with Outkast, but I'm
well,
curious.
but I can, I want to switch the flip the script and talk about writers who are actually incorporating hip hop in what they're doing.
Yes.
Roger just did it for us.
Well, that's when I fell in love
He
with
just
Roger.
did it. Kiese Levon, have you heard of Kiese Levon?
Yes.
Kiese has his heavy is steeped in Southern hip hop. His writing is steeped in it.
Yes.
You know who else is Jasmine Ward? Like
Jasmine Ward. Hey,
I think that like there's a way
I gotta pop my collar right quick because they're both from Mississippi. Hold up. There we go.
I think Jasmine
Not
Ward
the collar.
is so. I think is what's really interesting about her work is the way it has what I would call not just a Southern sort of tradition, but a very blues and hip hop tradition in the work, in the men, like between if you think about like The Men We Reap, right? That book, right? Where she's thinking about all the men that she's lost, right? Or even in Salvage the Bones, right? There's a way in which it's both the like Southern Gothic and the like, and I think there's a way in which hip hop has a Gothic to it, but it's not the like Tyler the Creator Gothic. It's a very Southern thing. So I would love to, make sure we talk about like Jasmine Ward and Rhapsody, which is another.
Yeah, Rhapsody. Yeah, I don't know how we forgot about Rhapsody.
Yes,
I don't know how we forgot about Rhapsody. Man, we are really slipping tonight.
We slipped
yeah, we are definitely. But when you think about that Gothic, the South is steeped in Gothicism, if there's such a word. So when you talk about Mississippi and Gothicism or Gothic, it don't get more Gothic than Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. The pain and poverty and death at the hands of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a sensitive human being, and all artists are sensitive human beings, they can't help but do it. But Jasmine does it in a way that makes me want to throw my pen away.
Mm-hmm. She'd be really right.
Oh, brother.
Well, I'm going to brag on Roger for a minute because when I met him, it was at a symposium at UT called Facing Racism. And he read from King Me. And immediately after his session was over, he was someone that I just ran to and said, I'm working on this project. And that sort of intersection, it wasn't even an intersection, it was a natural bridge, an extension from literature into hip hop, from hip hop back into literature. It was that dialogue, as it was encapsulated in those poems, was everything I wanted to reflect visually in the exhibition. So I just want to say thank you. And then Charlie has just been a source. As you can hear, he is a well of information, a virtual source of information. And so whenever I had a question, all I had to do was phone up Charlie. And I'm just blown away by this conversation. Brittany York has a question that I'd like to read. She asks, who is the artist that you feel is lyrically impressive, but their choice in sound/music prevent them from reaching a broader audience?
That's a good question.
I think I'll bring back Rhapsody, right? Like I think it's a shame. Like she can't. She has mainstream public. She gets some mainstream, but like she can't win a Grammy. I think she's writing some of the best work. That album Eve is an amazing conceptual album.
Yeah, it is.
Talk about like avant-garde because like it's conceptual. She takes Black women's these different types of Black women and sort of again thinks about them as a poetics, as a sensibility, right? And like I think that album conceptually is right up there with something like Ziggy Stardust, right? Like that's like David Bowie level, you know what I mean? And I'm not using Bowie as like just because he's white, but like when we think of contemporary concept album, we go to that sort of, and I just feel like she's someone who her stuff may not be always like, it's not going to do the, what Megan Thee Stallion Hot Girl Summer does for people. But I think in terms of its thinkerliness, in terms of its, and she's Southern, she's North Carolina. I just think that's an artist I would say I wish had more. I wish we looked at her more and listened to her more and like put her in conversations with hip hop. It's I hope it's not like it's like Jean Grey back in the day. She's Northern, but like Jean Grey was like someone who I was definitely into in the like late 90s, early 2000s that people weren't on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I felt the same way about Georgia Ann Mulgrew. But I also think Ciroc. I think Ciroc lyrically is on point. I think her music is on point, but we have to understand when it comes to mainstream recognition, there's a lot of politics involved in that. There's a lot of industry politics involved in that may have nothing to do with the artist.
Right.
The only thing I can tell you is to keep supporting the artist, keep spreading the word about her, about the artist that you love, that you think deserves. Like I like JID. I love JID. I think he's going to be somebody to watch in the future. I'm trying to think of who else. Earth Gang. I like Earth Gang, but I like Earth Gang because they remind me of Outkast. So I'm an Outkast fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know we are running tight, but we have one last question that I'd like to pose. And then the special surprise for those who'd like to stay is we've asked both Roger and Charlie to read more poems as an encore to this session. So with this answering your response to this last question, I'm just going to turn the floor back over to you to read your poems. So Mako Fennell, who is now
Mako, what's up?
Richmond, welcome.
What's happening, brother?
He asks, how do we place J Electronica?
It's a good one.
Ooh.
So can I start? It's so hilarious because I literally had that as one of my questions. I said, who's pushing limits of form? How might, like I was asking Charlie, how might the limits of form being pushed? I'm thinking about how J Electronica rapped over the soundtrack to the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, right? I think J Electronica to me, I would like to put, I don't think he's doing this yet, but I think there's the possibility of this is sort of, do you remember Duke Ellington's late work when he's doing these big orchestral pieces that are like, he's trying to tell the history of African Americans in like, right, where he's like moving classical with jazz, like he's doing all of it blues at once, and he's like giving it tone, he's doing it different. Like I think J Electronica, like if I were a producer or if I was a rapper and I would be like, yo, why don't we write a suite? Like what would a hip hop suite look like, right? And I think he has that capability to like, I think he can rhyme on anything. Like I think that's it. He can rhyme over anything, clearly. Rhyme with it, against it. He can make it musical. I think that like when I think of J Electronica, I think about his time in Dallas, his time being, I just feel like he could do more than what we're getting. And I think there's a lot of possibility in what Jay Electronica has already given us. There's a lot of space to walk around.
You know, what's interesting, Mako, is that a lot of people don't see Jay as a Southern MC, but he's born and bred in New Orleans. Okay. And I would like to see Jay come home. You know, one of the things that I really admire about Mos Def, a lot of people don't know, Mos Def spent time in New Orleans. Mos Def spent time around the country and around the world. But when he got there, he absorbed himself with the culture. Jay clearly has absorbed himself with New York. He sounds like a New York MC to me. I want to see him come home and work with some of these hungry, up and coming and veteran producers. I'd like to see him work with Manny Fresh. I'd like to see him work with KLC and Beats by the Pound. I'd like to see him work with Ice Mike. I'd like to see him go to Houston and work with N.O. Joe. You know, Corey Moe. Then I'd like to see him go work with DJ Premier. If he just do an album with Premier,
that'd be dope.
Texas and New Orleans together, now you know you in trouble.
That's right. Come on, that would be dope.
But you know, I think he's one of the best MCs out there. But like most really good MCs, sometimes they don't know how to pick beats because they can rhyme over anything. It doesn't matter what beat you give them.
I feel that. Yeah.
Well, this is a good place to wrap up and end the session itself, but I would love for those who'd like to stay to listen to some of the amazing poetry created by these two gentlemen. Charlie and Roger, I'm just going to say thank you because we're just going to roll out with you. And thank you for joining us this evening. Go guys. I'm not sure who wants to go first or how you want to do it, but I think you've got a synergy going on. So
I'm going to let you want to go first, brother?
I'll go first. I'm just going to read two. I'm going to read, in fact, I'm going to read just one poem. I'm going to read one poem. That's, I'm gonna read, yeah, you know, I'm gonna read this one poem for James Baldwin.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
You know, like he's a New Yorker, but family from the South.
Yep, Alabama.
And so I got an opportunity to hear James Baldwin sing Precious Lord. And I wrote a poem that's sort of thinking about him singing Precious Lord. So I think I want to end with that.
Okay.
So this is my poem. And then Charlie, you read whatever you want after that, brother.
Okay, brother.
Grendel. All lions must lean into something other than a roar. James Baldwin, for instance, singing Precious Lord. His voice is weary as water broken over his scalp in a storefront sanctified church's baptismal pool. All those years ago, when he wanted to be somebody's child and on fire in that being. Lord, I want to be somebody's child and chosen water spilling over their scalp, water taking the shape of their longing, a deer diving into evening traffic and the furrow drawn in the air over the hood of the car, power, and wanting to be something alive and open. Lord, I want to be alive and open. A glimpse of power, the shuffle of a mother's hand over a sleeping child's forehead, as if clearing the city's rust from its face, which we mostly are, a halo of rust, a glimpse of power. James Baldwin leaning into the word light, his voice jostling that single grain in his throat as if he might drop it or already has. I am calling to that grain of light, to that gap between his teeth where the many of us fatherless sleep and bear and be whatever darkness or leaping thing we can be. In James Baldwin's mouth, my difficult beauty, my weak and worn, my future as any number of angels, which is not unlike the beast Grendel, coming out of the wild heaven into the hills and halls of the mead house at the harpist's call, with absolute prophecy in his breast and a desire for mercy, for a friend, an end to drifting in loneliness. And in that coming down, out of the hills, out of the trees, for once, bringing humans the best vision of themselves, which of course must be slaughtered.
Mm. Yeah. Whoa. Whoa. You're not gonna read another one after that one, brother?
I just
You
want
sure?
more.
I mean, I want to hear some more.
I just feel like, you know, like maybe one more. I'll read one more. And
One
then,
more, just one more.
All right. It's a shorter one. This one's called Children Listen. It turns out, however, I was deeply mistaken about the end of the world. The body in flames will not be the body in flames, but just a house fire ignored. The black sails of that solitary burning boat rubbing along the legs of lovers flung into an Austin sky by a carousel. The lovers too sick in their love to notice a man drenched in fire on a porch, or a child aflame mistaken for a dog, mistaken for a child running to tell of a bomb that did not knock before it entered in Gaza with its glad tidings of abundant joy. In Casmira's, a god is weeping in a window, one golden hand raised above his head, as if he slipped on the slick rag of the future. Our human kindnesses, unremarkable as the flies rubbing their legs together while standing on a slice of cantaloupe. Children, you were never meant to be human. You must be the grass. You must grow wildly over the graves.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Woo. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Powerful, powerful. I'm going to read a poem called Cosmic Encounters. An old masked man in a grass suit, the color of purple, walked down the road singing an odd song in a strange tongue, set to an exotic melody that sounded so much like the thousands of tunes that haunt my head at night when I try to sleep, but rest never comes. Only the din of 1,000, 100,000, 100,000,000 voices wailing. The old man peered at me through the tiny slits in the wooden mask he wears. His pupils pierce my soul with the reflection of the ocean between us and the rolling tides that tie us to one another. In between the choruses, he says, "Come on, you know this song."
Mm.
But even though the rhythms and the melody sound so familiar, I do not know the song. And I felt ashamed as the warm, familiar look in his eyes turned from curiosity to pity. With the burden of my shame sitting square on my shoulders, I turn away, destined to wander through life's highways and byroads, lost and aimless, stumbling from crossroad to crossroad. This poem here is called Songs That Are Sacred and Pure, and it's for Toni Morrison.
Mm.
We live in a constrict space, a place where there is more love for the wicked than there is rest for the weary. And yet we do sing, we do shout, we do chant. And when our tongues are tied with the pain that is tethered to the deep souls of our ancestors. We do hum, we do moan and groan, our work songs that are yet untitled. We do this Black magic music to ensure that the circle remain unbroken and that the memories of our beloveds remain sacred and pure.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, brother.
Beautiful. It's been so beautiful. I love this conversation with you, Charlie. Thank you for being such a
I do too, Roger. I'm really happy to have had this conversation, brother. I'm really happy to have had this conversation. And as soon as this, I guess it's over now, huh? I'm vaccinated. Are you?
I'm vaccinated.
Hey, man, let's get together and do this.
I know we're only like one state away from each other because you right
That's
there.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'll come over there and see you.
Come see me, brother. I haven't been to Houston in a while. You in
Man,
Houston?
come through. I'm gonna be there this weekend. I'm back. I'm about to go to Houston tomorrow morning.
Oh, word. Oh,
Yeah.
man, bruh, you got to get some barbecue or
Oh man, you know it. You know it. You know it. I'm gonna be out there, brother, man. Well, thank y'all so much. Both Izzy and Valerie and Charlie.
Yes,
Man,
yes, thank you.
I gotta get to I've been away from my daughter, so I know she's probably tearing things up. So I might have to.
Thank you, Roger and Charlie and Valerie, for this wonderful talk tonight and our second installment in our speaker series. Thank you again, everyone, our audience and our speakers this evening.